Good morning to you all. It is a pleasure for me to be with you here this morning. I'd like to thank the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, the UNDP, and the Ministry of Youth and Sports for this great partnership and initiative to equip youth administrators with the knowledge and training necessary for them to advocate against gender-based violence to a targeted group, youths. Gender-based violence is one of the most pervasive violations of human rights in the world, one of the least prosecuted crimes, and one of the greatest threats to lasting peace and development. I'm honored to be here at your request to address this urgent matter as we join together to advance human rights, democracy, and the common values of humanity. It is an opportune time to have a workshop like this as we embark on the period of 16 days of activism on gender-based violence. Violence against women and girls knows no social, economic, or national boundaries. Worldwide, an estimated 1 in 3 women will experience physical, emotional, or sexual abuse in her lifetime. In Fiji, up to 72% of women face some form of violence in their lifetime, mostly at the hands of her intimate partner. Gender-based violence undermines the health, dignity, security, and autonomy of its victims, yet it remains shrouded in a culture of silence. Victims of violence can suffer sexual and reproductive health, sexually transmitted infections, including HIV, and even death. We all know that we have to do much more to respond to the cries for justice of women and children who have suffered violence. We have to do much more to end these horrible abuses and the impunity that allows these human rights violations to continue. I think we can all agree that the time for complacency is long gone and belongs to another era. The silence on violence against women and children has been broken, and now is the time for stronger action. We understand that gender-based violence is an extreme manifestation of gender inequality and systemic gender-based discrimination. Government, as policymaker, has shown its commitment to achieve gender equality through allocating government budget to the national women's machinery to implement its programs and effectively act as a gender advisor to government, establishing the first national gender policy to engage all government agencies in mainstreaming gender into their policies and programs, ratification of regional and international treaties to uphold women's rights in Fiji, and adequately reporting the progress, evolving laws, domestic violence decree, crimes decree, child welfare decree, that provide a platform for justice and safety to victims of violence. Domestic violence helpline, which is currently a work in progress, and upon its institution will allow victims and concerned members of the public to get immediate assistance in cases of violence. Government alone cannot achieve gender equality in our society, which is markedly a patriarchal one. We need strong partnerships with relevant organizations and leaders at community level. We need the men, the church leaders, and youth leaders, and motivators like yourselves to help advocate on the issue of gender-based violence and its root causes. Fijian society has changed dramatically over the years. Government programs and action are much more focused on human rights and the international agenda for sustainable development. Human rights and the SDGs have at its core women's equality as a human right and gender empowerment. Gender has become a cross-cutting issue, demanding gender mainstreaming in all programs of work at national and international level. Then we have non-government organizations and UN bodies and their advocacy on gender equality. Today's training is an example of such work. We need youths to understand that manifestations of cultural and traditional norms which divide women and men in society based on societal expectations on how they should look, how they should behave, speak, and act, gives life to hierarchical notions of power, which is even more prominent in a patriarchal society like ours. When I talk about norms, I mean, for example, fragility, submissiveness, and nurturing as perceived feminine gender norms, dominance, aggression, and competition as perceived masculine gender norms. Your work deals with youths in our communities. Most of these communities are in rural areas, where the manifestations of cultural and traditionally perceived gender norms are still rife. Dealing with youths whose minds have been tuned in to these perceived gender norms will not be easy. What you will be asking of them is to change their mindsets, to get rid of all perceptions in their minds relating to gender divisions in society, and to accept the universal values of human rights, of women's rights and empowerment. You will be telling them that there is no shame in discussing sexual reproductive health with members of the opposite sex. You will basically be telling them that the Fijian society of today, which is clothed in a culture of great global citizenry, does not consider women of lesser value than men. You will be telling them that what they may have been taught by their parents or their grandparents through words or actions which belittle women and girls, and justifying that belittling as a cultural norm is wrong, both morally and legally. You need to tell them that that type of behavior, which is not rooted in love, respect, and compassion that our elders and community leaders like to preach about, but is rooted in the mistaken belief that some humans are more equal than others, as aptly put by George Orwell. Youths need to understand that the Fiji of today abhors gender-based violence. They need to know that the rising national statistics of gender-based violence in Fiji is rooted in the marked difference in the status of women and men in our society. They need to know that despite all the good work being done by government and her partners in the non-government sector, gender-based violence is still rife. They need to know that this is because Fijians are still instilling notions of inequalities between the sexes in every walk of life. They need to know that when they shy away from discussions about sexual reproductive health because members of the opposite sex are also in the discussion, they're contributing to the root causes of gender-based violence. They need to know that when males punch their sisters because she had gone out clubbing, that is wrong, morally and legally. They need to know that when their parents shave off their daughter's hair because she has had premarital sex, that is wrong. Youths need to understand that our culture, which seemingly and outwardly protects our women and girls, in fact inculcates a culture of gender division and servitude, inequality and differentiation. A culture that preserves political and socio-economic opportunities for males first. That culture needs to change. It starts from home and it needs to start now. Youths need to understand that they have a heightened capacity to revolutionize Fijian society given their age and the fact that they will, in the next few years, become the face of Fiji as parents and as leaders, both in their local communities and in national life. They have the power to shape the next step in the development of our nation. The face of Fiji under their leadership will be partly determined by how well they grasp what you have been or will be tasked to convey to them after this training. Your job in changing mindsets will not be an easy one. You will be reinventing cultural norms and nuances in the context of women's rights as human rights and the empowerment of women. Your success will be hugely determined by your own belief in what you will be preaching. There's no greater teacher than one who is actually living what he or she is teaching. Empower youths so that they not only understand the role of equal treatment of women and girls in the elimination of gender-based violence as an abstract concept, but rather that they end up living it in their everyday lives before they assume their leadership role in their communities and in national life in the next few years. To the organizers, I thank you again for this timely intervention in the fight against gender-based violence. With these words, I declare this workshop open and wish you a very productive 3 days of discussion. Vuniwaqa.